Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/ironsysadmin. And thank you. Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/IronSysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/IronSysadmin. And thank you. News, ops, and a little bit of paranoia. Welcome to the Iron Sysadmin podcast. Welcome, folks, to tonight's episode of the Iron Sysadmin podcast. I'm your host, Nate, and I'm joined tonight by our good old friend, Uncle Mark.
Yeah, I'm mostly here. I jammed my right thumb in my headset when I was putting it back on, and it was really awkward and embarrassing and stupid. And
That is one of the strangest injuries I've ever heard of. Injured by headphones.
I can't. Yeah, I feel dumb.
You'll be able to appreciate this story, Mark, and I promise it'll be brief, and then we'll get to the main topic, folks. But
Sure.
My dad volunteers with our local ambulance, right? So back in the 90s, I was still a teenager, right? And he gets called to an ambulance call, and he comes back, and he tells me the story of what occurred. Somebody, now, 90s, remember, 90s, that's key here. A man had beaten another man with a laptop.
Oh, yeah.
A 90s laptop.
So first of all, ouch, that's gonna hurt.
Yeah.
And second of all,
That's an expensive
that's not
assault.
cheap to replace.
That is an expensive assault.
Oh, that's terrible.
So yeah,
because my ThinkPad would probably bounce off of most people's skulls at this point.
I know, right?
So-
They're not that heavy, right? I mean, yeah, you could do some damage, mate, especially with the edge, right? They're pretty firm edges. I bet it would dent the laptop, but it would hurt.
Could cut a bitch with it, but yeah, I mean, a beating by a 90s I had laptops in the 90s.
90s laptops were heavy. They were like freaking, it was like a lead acid battery, you know?
Because it might have had one.
It probably did. All right.
Sheesh.
So that's our story for tonight. Good night, folks. No.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Yeah. Mark's choking on his Buffalo Trace. Is it Buffalo Trace or something else?
It is Buffalo Trace. I'm hoping that my son-in-law, well, he'll be my son-in-law in a month, took the hint, and there will be Buffalo Trace delivered with my daughter when she visits us tomorrow.
Did you like?
I've been on vacation for 2 weeks.
Did you like tell him that
I
it was almost empty or something?
I outright told him when we saw them before I left for vacation.
We need more.
Lucas, I'm almost out of Buffalo Trace, and my birthday's coming up. Just hint, hint.
The not so subtle hint, right?
It was not subtle at all. The dude
Not so.
takes good care of me. Takes good care of me. Takes good care of my daughter. So
That's important, though. It's important to
it is.
have that in a future son-in-law.
I wish you the same luck when your spawn start marrying people.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're at a different phase of that right now, where we're taking care of my
You
wife's
hope.
parents. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, right. So, I could speak highly of myself and say that they got a good son-in-law, but I'm not that vain.
Yeah.
Anyway,
They
tonight,
probably did all right.
so
They could have done a
folks,
lot worse.
they could have done a lot worse. We've had this nice series on cloud, right? We talked about cloud terminology. We talked about what was the second one? Lift and shift, and then we talked about microservices with just Jason and I last episode. Now, between last episode and this one, a friend and colleague that's also part of the Enable Sysadmin community he heard our last show or heard some of our recent shows, and he sent me this article. It's just basically a blog post from David Heinemeier. I don't know how to pronounce that.
Heinemeier Hansen. David Heinemeier Hansen.
Who
we're gonna just call him David, but he's got a cool ass wicked 3 names.
Right. So I didn't know this, but apparently he's like the brain behind Ruby on Rails. He's like,
and I've
like the guy.
I've used Ruby on Rails. I've programmed in it.
Yeah,
Not
I mean,
but I've programmed in it.
Add that to the list of languages I've programmed in not well.
You have programmed poorly.
Right. But so anyway, he's also he's the co-founder of Basecamp and an email service called HEY, which apparently is like an email service that's not, it's like, they claim they're changing the way email is utilized. I didn't look too deeply into exactly how or why, but whatever.
Well, they have something called an IM box, which I already hate. On the other hand, it's called Hey.
Yeah.
Hey.
And he's also an author. He's written, it looks like 4 books. So, it's that's cool stuff.
He's got, in other words, I think what we can say is he's not some loser tech journalist with no real world experience. He actually runs tech companies. He has an understanding of programming, an understanding of computers, an understanding of services. I hope you can still hear me, J Scar.
Yeah.
Right. So this guy's got some credibility.
Right. J Scar's in the chat saying, "I'm not sure which mic Uncle Mark is using, but I can still hear him." Does that mean you shouldn't be able to, should I mute him? Is he a problem?
And I am making little background and low level comments. Like, I don't know if anybody caught Party or World when I started singing it. This is a good mic. Some dude sent it to me.
Someone actually, technically, patrons bought it for you. Although
thank you, listeners.
Yes, now it's better. What was wrong? Okay, well, I don't want to go too deep into Mark's microphone because I think it's fine. Maybe there's something with the stream going on, but the recording should be good. So whatever, we're gonna roll with it. All right. Mic? So anyway, the article that he wrote was back on October 19th, and don't mute Uncle Mark. Okay, I won't mute Uncle Mark. It was back on October 19th. Like a whole week ago. A little over a week ago. And it's why we're leaving the cloud. And the we he's talking about.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, the we he's talking about, of course, are things like Basecamp and HEY. So what I wanted to do, he brings up some really interesting points. Why are you hitting your mic?
I was just making sure it was using the right source because I was playing my audio sources earlier when the thing we're going to talk about in chat, and I was just absolutely verifying it's going through this mic, and it is.
Okay. Anyway, now you went and derailed me. Okay, so the article brings up,
but you are easily distracted.
I am. It brings up some interesting points, and what I wanted to do was basically it's not a terribly long article, but it brings up some things that we could probably discuss a bit. So I'm going to kind of read through maybe even all of it word for word. And as we go, we're going to talk about the different points that he raises. So
yeah, sure.
He starts out, he says, Basecamp has had one foot in the cloud for well over a decade. And HEY Yeah, hey,
Hey.
hey, do I have to say it that way? I can't say it that way. Has been running
No, but I'm going to
there
say it every time you say hey.
has been running there exclusively since it was launched 2 years ago. We've run extensively in both Amazon's cloud and Google's cloud. We've run on bare virtual machines. We've run on Kubernetes. We've seen all the cloud has to offer and tried most of it. It's finally time to conclude renting computers is mostly a bad deal for medium-sized companies like ours with stable growth. The savings promised in, or yeah, the savings promised in reduced complexity never materialized. So we're making our plans to leave.
So, so this is good. I think something to keep in mind. He's qualifying his situation,
Right.
right? He's
Yep.
not saying the cloud won't work for anybody. He's saying he's a medium-sized company, which implies that, maybe for very big companies or very tiny companies, what he observes may not be true. But
Yep.
let's
And
yeah,
the next
that's good.
paragraph starts to touch on that already. He says the cloud
Okay.
excels at two ends of the spectrum, where only one end was ever relevant for us. The first end is when your application is so simple and low traffic that you really do save on complexity by starting with fully managed services. And that makes sense, right? You got a small enough application,
Mhm.
you just kind of drop into a cloud provider and say, I need, a WordPress, and you click a couple buttons and you've got a WordPress. That's just an example, right? I know a lot of businesses aren't going to run a WordPress, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Application comes out
Yeah.
of a can, you run the application. You need email, you spin up some email addresses on cloud provider X or Gmail or something like that, and off you go, right? Um, I have to start highlighting where I'm at so I don't lose my spot. First, here we go. This is the shining path that Heroku forged. Heroku was a early,
That's I had to Google it. It's
yeah,
a cloud platform as a service supporting
right,
several programming languages.
okay, and
And
that
it originally supported just Ruby.
and the one that has since the one that has since been paved by Render, which I guess is another similar service, and others. It
Yeah,
remains,
let me help you with
yeah, there's totally a
Google.
link to click there.
Unified cloud to build and run your apps and website with free TLS, global CDN. These look like smaller.
Yeah,
These are like not as big as Amazon type situations.
right. It remains a fabulous way to get started when you have no customers,
Fabulous.
and it'll carry you quite far, even once you start having some. Then you'll later be faced with a good problem once the bills grow into the stratosphere and usage picks up. But that's a reasonable trade-off. Now, what he's referring to here is anyone who's ever built or managed a data center knows there's a bunch of cost there, right? And in order to run a website,
Hmm.
you need something to run it on. So you can either pay a web hosting provider. Before cloud providers were really the big deal. You can pay like a web hosting provider or someone who designs and runs websites for you to run your website. Or you can stand up your own small data center, or you can put a machine in your basement like I did for a long time. And then, of course, you have fees for internet services and you have fees for, like, what if the power goes out? What if the heating and cooling is unmanageable, right? What if the room you have it in gets too hot and your server overheats, right? So these are all things you got to think about to make a truly enterprise grade platform, right? And what the cloud does is it takes all that away. You don't have to worry about that because all you do is you go to Amazon and you click a couple buttons, or you go to whatever cloud provider you want. You click a couple buttons, and for a couple dollar or a couple cents an hour, you have a relatively stable, until it's not, platform that you don't have to worry about heating and cooling and power and earthquakes and power outages and lightning storms and snowstorms that take out phone poles and
Mm.
all that stuff, right? Because you're in a cloud provider that has already taken that into account and builds it into the price of your tiny little EC2 instance or whatever you're running on. Right? Anything else to add to that, Mark?
I think you're being super optimistic, but okay. The article will counter some of the things you're saying later because I actually
Oh
don't
yeah,
agree.
that's my point. I'm trying to go with, like, this is the sales pitch for the cloud, right? And you're right.
Yeah.
We're gonna touch more on this as we go. All right. So, and then the second is when your load is high, or sorry, when your load is highly
Highly
irregular.
irregular.
Highly irregular. This is highly irregular. Um, when you have wild swings or towering peaks in usage, when the baseline is it's a sliver of your largest needs, or when you have no idea whether you need 10 servers or 100. There's nothing like the cloud for when that happens, right? So what he's talking about is bursty traffic, right? Like you run a business that maybe gets slammed at Christmas time or gets slammed when ticket sales open, or like when I worked at the college during registration, right? When kids had to register for young adults had to register for their classes, registration was a time that we had to have a whole lot of capacity available for the system that let you do your registrations. That's the kind of thing we're talking about. 90% of the year, the thing was sitting there almost idle because it didn't get a whole lot of hits, right? All right.
So this makes me think of one of our mutual hobbies, and that is online gaming.
Yep.
There was a time, and I give credit to the cloud for this one. There was a time when purveyors of online games had to host their own stuff in their own data center, and they would often vastly underestimate demand. So launch day would come, and they'd be slammed. I'm looking at you, Blizzard, and actually, it's still kind of bad sometimes. I think there.
Yeah.
Launch day would come, they'd be slammed, and you'd be staring at the login prompt or in a queue, or it just wouldn't work, and they would be trying to stand up new servers.
Right.
A lot of online games nowadays leverage cloud services, especially online games that don't require that you have a home server. And if you've never done an MMO, that's going to be an alien concept to you. But the idea is that there's different named servers, generally named after the lands in the realm or the characters or the whatever.
Something in the
there's
lore,
separate copies. Yeah, there's separate copies of the whole world. And so if you want to play with your friends, you meet on the same realm. And what it does is, rather than having everybody in one big universe, it's multiple copies of it, and then the populations are more reasonable.
Right.
But so that model, you still can run into the challenges of bad demand forecast. You stand up certain more realms, more unique realms, and then when you have that initial player drop off, you've got realms that are barely populating. You gotta start consolidating. But for online games that don't use that realm system, the cloud's a friggin' godsend, because you can just scale up cloud-based resources as fast as you need to deal with the player-based demands, and then when your populations start to drop,
you turn it off.
You can scale back down.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. So he continues, there's nothing like the cloud when that happens. Like we learned when launching HEY.
Hey.
And suddenly 300,000 users signed up to try our service in 3 weeks instead of our forecast 30,000 in 6 months, right? So again, what he's describing there is they couldn't predict how many people were going to sign up for their service, just like the Blizzard example that you just gave. So they guesstimated wrong, and because they were in the cloud, they were able to meet that demand, presumably. He doesn't go into say that, but he implies it, because they were able to expand quickly, right? So good stuff.
Yep.
All right, and then he goes on to say, but neither of those two conditions apply to us today. They never did. They never did for Basecamp. Yet, by continuing to operate in the cloud, we're paying an, at times, almost absurd premium for the possibility that it could. It's like paying a quarter of your house's value for earthquake insurance when you don't live anywhere near a fault line. Yeah, sure, if somehow a quake 2 states over opens the earth so wide that it cracks your foundation, you might be happy to have it. But it doesn't feel proportional, does it?
That's he's on to something here.
Yeah, right. I think it's a good example. It's the usual thing of, there's risk. What's reasonable risk, right? And in this case, it sounds like reasonably, there's no risk that their applications are going to be under such heavy load unpredictably that they could really leverage the cloud. Now, again, he admitted that did happen with HEY, but I guess that leveled off.
Hey.
Yeah. All right, now he goes, let's take HEY.
Hey.
As an example, we're paying over $500,000 per year for database, RDS, and search, ES. I think that's Elasticsearch. Is that what they call that?
That is Elasticsearch, yeah.
Services,
Elasticsearch, Elasticsearch, Elastigirl.
Elastigirl.
She's incredible.
Yeah, right. Services from Amazon. Yes. When you're processing email from many tens of thousands of customers, there's a lot of data to analyze and store. But this still strikes me as rather absurd. Do you know how many insanely beefy servers you could purchase on a budget of $500,000 per year? Okay, so I'm going to stop there because the next paragraph is going to rebuttal that. But so right, $500,000 a year. That could.
Let's see here. 20. So let's see. Let's take $500,000, 500K. Expensive servers when I was back at Merck were $25,000 fully loaded. So you could buy 20. You could buy 20. And again, those came fully loaded. Lots of RAM, lots of processor, lots of disk space.
So you could buy 20 of them for the price of 1 year, right?
Right. And then of course, own them, and they have a lifespan of probably 4 or 5 years.
Then, of course, you have to power them, you have to cool them, you have to have the expertise to manage them, you have to have the space for them, right? So these are all the arguments that cloud providers will throw at you, saying, you don't want to run your own data center. Let us run the data center for you. Tell me when you've heard this before. Do we really want our core competencies to be in infrastructure management? Right? I heard that a lot when I was at the college. That's what I heard in the year or so up to when I vacated the premises.
Well, see, the problem is that infrastructure competencies or infrastructure services, everybody, when you've got an infrastructure team that's doing their job, it looks like it's a no effort situation. Right? Once you take that team away, then you realize just how complicated this crap actually is.
Right. So he goes on. Now, the argument always goes, and you'll see why I went down this path, and Mark, I'm sure you've read this already, but, thank you for humoring me. Now, the argument always...
I've watched customers live this.
Yeah, the argument always goes, sure, but you have to manage those machines. The cloud is so much simpler. The savings will all be there in labor costs, except...
Bullshit.
Except no. Anyone who thinks running a major service like HEY or Basecamp in the cloud is simple has clearly never tried. And I'm going to have to agree with that, right? There's a ton of... So maybe you don't have to worry about power and cooling and Ethernet and network layers and VLANs and firewalls and how do you rack and stack, right?
But
hold on, some of that you do. You're right, but I mean, like, you don't have to physically rack a Cisco firewall and have an engineer on staff, right? You don't have to have someone that's certified in Cisco and in whatever your OS is and in cabling. Right? Cabling was kind of a big deal at the college because, yes, I can make cables, but I can't certify the cables. And they wanted certified cables to make sure they weren't going to fail in 3 years, right? So they had to buy cables, right? And these are all added expenses, right? However, when you go to the cloud, you just trade that for learning how to manage things like, the software-defined equivalents of most of those things. You still have to be able to figure out networking. You still have to be able to figure out firewalling. It's just that it's abstracted away from you and harder for you to really get to the guts of.
Right. And software-defined networking and software-defined whatever is not necessarily even easier.
Right. The only difference is you don't have to... The one thing you save on is the physical piece of it. You don't have to rack and stack, and you don't have to own a data center with floor space, and you don't have to run cables. But those things, like, I don't want to marginalize those as though they are nothing or free or something. But I feel like when you're talking about the grand scheme of a data center, adding that on isn't that much. Do you agree?
It's certainly not $500,000 a year in renting. I don't know.
Right.
So the other thing is, how far in this paragraph did you get?
I just finished the Cloud is Simple, has clearly never
No, I
tried,
never
dot,
tried.
dot, dot. Some things are simpler, others more complex. But on the whole, I've yet to hear of organizations at our scale being able to materially shrink their operations team just because they moved to the cloud.
And that is something that is absolutely the case because in my when I was tamming still, before I ascended to becoming an evil manager, every single one of my customers were doing something cloud like, but they were still Linux servers. They were still they still required talented people to know how to deal with them. Just because some moron can click on an EC2 button and stand up an Amazon Linux system, that doesn't do it. All you then have is a box with Amazon Linux on it. You don't have anything really configured, and most companies have their own golden images or their own software packages, their own configurations they need
Yep.
as part of their system. So
Yep.
you don't end up getting rid of, well, you can if you're a dummy. You don't end up reducing your operations staff because they're they still need to actually functionally deploy, functionally maintain,
Yeah.
and secure and patch all
Like
this
I
stuff.
I suppose that if you lived in the dream world where everything you ran was some sort of a platform as a service, where all you worried about was the language on up, right? So like think containers or even Lambda, something like that. If you could do 100% in that, never had to touch a Linux command line, then theoretically you wouldn't need operations or platform folks. But realistically, unless you're tiny, I don't feel like that happens. You're always going to end up with something that doesn't fit in that box, at least in today's landscape, that
Sure.
requires a Linux shell or requires a Windows server, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, you're always going to have those folks. You're always going to have people that are, and I agree with the statement, right? I've seen folks move to the cloud. I've never seen them be able to just say, nope. Oh, I hit my mic. Nope, we don't need
We know,
30%
yeah,
of
we
our
don't need
staff
our
now.
Linux team anymore.
Yeah, and
No, you
that
don't.
like I also wouldn't want to see that happen, right? Because I want to see Linux admins stay gainfully employed.
Right.
But that was
The
that was
point
always our
is,
fear at the
yeah,
beginning, right? When the cloud first showed up, it's like, oh man, we're all gonna be out of jobs. Well, here we
no,
are, a decade and a half later.
you're trading one set of complexities for another set of
Yeah,
complexities.
yeah,
And, you know, that's just the reality.
right. All right. So the article goes on. It was a wonderful marketing coup, though. Sold with analogies like, well, you don't run your own power plant either, do you, right? Or are infrastructure services really your core competency? Then lathered up with a thick coat of new. There's more news in there than I put more news. Paint, and the cloud has beamed through brightly on the or only yeah beam so
As being so
beamed
bright.
through so brightly only the Luddites would consider running their own servers in its shadow. How many times have you heard that one before? I felt like I was on the receiving end of that one a number of times as a sysadmin. Why are we running our own servers? Why do we want infrastructure to be one of our quote unquote core competencies? I've heard that exact phrase, which is why this struck home with me so much.
And my response was always performance in the cloud is sometimes very difficult to manage. It's unreliable. The cloud is not as stable as your own hardware. It's not as secure as your own hardware. And quite frankly, yeah, not everything's going to work.
Right. Yeah, and as was brought up in the chat here, I don't know if you're watching the chat. You always run into issues, or I should say, eventually you're going to run into issues where you really wish you had access to one of your network devices, or the hardware, for example, or metrics that you can get from like a baseboard management controller or something, right? You don't get that in the cloud. And I ran into this with one of my customers as a TAM. They were having a
Yeah.
performance issue, and I'm going to try not to go into too many details. One, because it's not really quite the point of the story, and two, because the customer is the customer, right? But were having a performance problem, and the cloud provider was involved in trying to troubleshoot the performance problem. The cloud provider insisted it was a REL problem. Our REL engineers or our REL support engineers insisted it was not a REL problem, that it was in fact a network problem. And all it turned into was a bunch of finger pointing. Now, I'm not going to I don't want to sound negative on either side of the fence. The support folks at the cloud provider did their best. The support folks on our side did their best, but there were pieces neither of us had any visibility into. And that was the problem. Eventually the problem just vanished on its own. No one figured out what the problem was, and it stopped happening.
All I can tell you, Amazon is trying to make money. And they're going to try and they're one of the ways they're going to do that is to try to have tenants, they're going to try and have full servers. When I was working with my daughter when she was back at Seton Hall and doing some stuff with chemistry, we stood up a server for her department that could run like analysis stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When that was at full CPU, it was only getting to use about 50 to 60% of what we were actually paying for, because VM stats showed that half the time the processor was being stolen from.
Right.
Because when you're on a KVM hypervisor, VM stat is aware of that, and Amazon uses KVM.
Right.
So Amazon makes you pay the full price per hourly price for that core, and is letting you use at times. Sometimes it dropped under 30% was available.
Dang.
Because the underlying hypervisors were saturated.
Yeah. Now I wonder if
Do you think Amazon reduced the hourly charge by down, 70% at that point? No.
I wonder if you can work around that with their instance types. Aren't there different instance types that guarantee more CPU? I wonder if that might have been a solution.
Maybe, but it would have been more expensive.
Oh, absolutely, it would have been more expensive. I'm not defending them. I'm just saying, like, is that the selling point, right? Oh, you don't want your CPU stolen away? Pay us more money.
Well, yeah. The point is, especially if you are not a deep technical person,
you'd never know.
Like that enraged me discovering that.
Mm-hmm.
I was legitimately pissed off. And that, whatever, man. I get it, they're a business. I get it, people worship Jeff Bezos, whatever. But they're making a fortune providing what is sometimes barely adequate service.
Right. Absolutely. All right, so the next paragraph goes into like profit margins and stuff, and I don't know if I necessarily want to go into every little bit of it. It just basically summarizes that Amazon is raking in profits, and they recently announced that they're going to expand their hardware lifecycle from, what was it, 4 to 5 years? Hold on, where is it here? Despite the
Yeah, they're basically trying to squeeze more money out of the equipment.
This margin is bound to soar now that the firm has said that it plans to extend the useful life of its servers from 4 years to 5. Now, at the college, our standard lifespan was 5 years, and I can tell you that you can get 5 years out of a server. However,
you can.
We probably didn't run our servers as hard as a cloud provider does, right? Like, those things see a ton of workload all day long. Ours probably didn't see nearly as much.
Based on my experience with Abby and the Seton Hall chemistry department, yeah.
All right, and it's networking equipment from 5 years to 6 years. So, and that's not happening right now. It just says in the future. It doesn't give a date. That's not the point of the article. But the point is that they're making lots of money on all this, renting computers to you. So, of course, they want to sell it to you. And they're only going to make that better for them and possibly worse for you by running on older hardware than they were. All right. And then he even goes on to say, which is fine. Of course, it's expensive to rent your computers from someone else, but it's never presented in those terms. The cloud is sold as computing on demand, which sounds futuristic and cool and very much not like something as mundane as renting computers, even though that's mostly what it is.
Womp womp.
Now, again, right, devil's advocate here. It's more than just renting computers. There's a whole bunch of APIs and infrastructure and whatever wrapped around that. It's not like you're literally renting a computer, like a laptop or something that you can just do general compute on. But the analogy is pretty sound, I think, right? Like,
I would say for many for I come from the corporate use case
mhm.
in most cases, and it is very much renting virtual computers. You're renting VMs. That's what an EC2 instance is.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Now, again, like we've talked about, making cloud native applications means that you're not just renting computers, you're renting compute and a platform, right? But it's still, the concept is still the same, I suppose. All
Sure.
right, let's see.
We're about to go into philosophy.
Yeah. Oh, right. And this is actually where I like where this article turns. All right. And I've said this before on the podcast, so stop me when you've heard these statements. Okay.
I'm not going to stop you.
But this isn't just about cost. It's about what kind of internet we want to operate in the future. It strikes me as downright tragic that this decentralized wonder of the world is now largely operating on computers owned by a handful of mega corporations. If one of the primary AWS regions goes down, seemingly half the internet goes offline along with it. And this is not what DARPA designed, right? So anybody who remembers internet history, the internet was designed to be a decentralized network that had many links between nodes, and it was supposed to be able to withstand things like wars and whatnot, so that communication could stay up. It was developed by DARPA. Were you going to say something, Mark?
Well, I was going to say, and this is not a hypothetical situation. This happens at least once a year, I think.
Oh, yeah. Some cloud provider loses a node or loses a link, or some routing table gets shunted off to China on accident. And all of a sudden, the internet is coming to its knees because DNS and routing and all this stuff is handled by this one massive data center, right? We both took a drink at the same time. Sorry for the silence. All right.
Never apologize for your alcoholism.
Thus, I consider it a duty duty. I said duty. Thus, I consider it a duty that we at 37 Signals, I don't know, is that the name of like his parent company? I don't know what 37 Signals is.
Maybe.
Signals. That we at 37 Signals.
37 signals and a flag ain't one. I don't know.
Do our part to swim against the stream.
I'm doing my part.
Yep.
A little bit of Starship Troopers.
Yeah, right.
I'm doing my part.
We have a business model that is incredibly compatible with owning hardware and writing it off over many years. Growth trajectories that are mostly predictable, expert staff who might as well employ their talents operating our own machines as those belonging to Amazon or Google. And I think there are plenty of other companies in similar boats. But before we more broadly can set sail back towards lower cost and decentralized shores, we need to turn rudder of our collective conversation away from the cloud-serving marketing nonsense about running your own power plant. Up until very recently, and this was the one that really hits me, and it's the close of the article, which was like a perfect point. Up until very recently, everyone ran their own servers, and much of the progress in tooling that enabled the cloud is available on your own machines as well. Don't let the entrenched cloud interests dazzle you into believing that running your own setup is too complicated. Everyone and their dog did it to get the internet off the ground. Yes, including my dog. My dog runs a server. It's Linux, too. And it's only gotten easier since. It's time It's time to part the clouds and let the internet shine through. Now, this is the statement that really gets me, all right? So, like, bottom lines and budgets and CapEx versus OpEx and simplicity aside, this is what really gets me, right? The internet was designed in a way that was supposed to make it fault tolerant and easy for anybody to set up and use on whatever hardware they wanted to use. This, and you might remember this same argument from when we talked about metaverse stuff, when Zuckerberg was trying to claim his birthright, right? Cloud
And he seems to be
providers,
losing, which gives me much pleasure.
cloud providers are slowly but surely, or I shouldn't say cloud providers. It's not necessarily their fault. They're just trying to make a buck. But our dependence on cloud providers is taking that away from us, right? And it's again, it's
Yep.
not their fault. It's not business's fault. They're doing what
Sure it
makes
is.
sense, right?
It's definitely their fault.
Well, business is generally not driven by ideals. It's driven by the bottom line. It's driven by money. It's driven by what costs less, what lets them operate
Right.
at the most profitable margins, right? The problem is that currently that the visibility of what is most profitable are cloud services, right?
For Amazon. I to me, one of the compelling arguments that he's making in this article is that you might be being flummoxed into believing that you're saving money when you in fact are not.
Right.
It
Right.
very well could be, it could be cheaper and more effective for you to be running your stuff in-house.
Right.
And I've said that for years.
So I'm a firm believer that when you're designing an application or starting a business or whatever project you're starting, you need to pick the right tool for the job, right? So if
Better than picking the wrong tool.
if you can work on whatever it is that you're trying to build and you can do it cheaper in the cloud, then do it in the cloud. Start with the cloud. If you outgrow the cloud, that's where it becomes problematic, right? Because if you've designed it to optimize your application for a specific cloud provider or even general cloud principles, it means that if you ever find yourself in a situation like they are here in the article, it makes it harder to move away, right? So if my application is set up so that it depends on, say, Amazon, and now I decide Amazon's too expensive, even if I want to move to another cloud provider, that's harder. If I want to move back to on-prem, that's harder because now I have to re-architect things so that they work in more traditional ways, right? So these are things you need to think about. And I apply that methodology to anything, whether it's IT or, building something for my Jeep, right? Like when I come to a crossroads and there's a this way will block me from doing other things, I think real hard about doing that first. Anyway, any more thoughts there, Mark? We're at the end of the article, and I feel like we haven't gone on nearly as long as normal, and I feel weird about that.
Well, we're allowed to have a nice, tight discussion.
What?
We are. First of all, you should absolutely send David the link to our show. Hopefully he'll listen to it and get a kick out of it.
I hope so too.
But I mean, he puts in very eloquent words things I've said for years.
Yeah, and that's what struck me. That's what struck me.
I was the guy
article.
Standing up at Merck saying, "Don't be fooled, people." And again, I've talked about the Merck situation because Merck was because we had a whole Class A subnet that we traded to Amazon for credits.
Yep.
The attitude there was, "Oh, this isn't costing us any money," although it would down the road. And again, I've seen customers like backtrack on all in on the cloud crap.
Yeah.
Because they realize it's not magic. You still need people who know what they're doing. And sometimes when you put your app in the cloud, especially if it's more of a classic server-based app, it just doesn't perform as well and it's more expensive.
Yep.
Yeah, if you re-architect with microservices, then maybe. But if you're running a Linux box, maybe it doesn't need to friggin' be an Amazon. I don't know.
Yeah. Now, again, though, it does come down to scale, right? Like, I run my own personal stuff on a cloud provider. It's not Amazon. It's a cheaper one. It's DigitalOcean. But
I run my stuff on a physical box behind the 3D printer.
Yeah, right. But you don't run a public-facing website on that, I'm assuming.
I run a public-facing game server or two.
Yeah.
And I could run a public-facing website if I wanted to.
Yeah, that gets harder when you're running like business-like services, right? And that's why
I'm not though.
Yeah, exactly. You're not, right. For the price I pay for a DigitalOcean droplet, it doesn't make sense to bring it in-house. I could, and I've thought about it a number of times. I've already got the machine in the basement, but I'd have to do things like upgrade my internet service to allow those ports because my ISP is stupid, and unless you have commercial access,
Oh, they're mean.
you don't get port 80 open. Yeah, because they want to sell.
What's going on over there?
You know, that's the kids outside in the hallway playing with the dog. So, you know, I locked the door so they couldn't come in, so now they hit the door with things.
I thought I heard them knocking earlier.
They did because they tried to open the door and it was locked. So they knocked instead.
Maybe they'll learn. Maybe they'll learn.
All right, folks.
Unlikely.
I think we'll close up the first half of the show then. I'll go through the usual routine. If you want to listen to the second half of the show, look up episode 128B in your podcast app. If you're watching us live, then you should just kind of hang on. We're going to go to a quick break, then we're going to come back on the live stream. We're not going to start a new one or anything. Just hang out, listen to the cool music. If you don't like the cool music, just mute it.
Some of our listeners have muted this whole thing, I'm sure. Probably.
They like the cloud, so they don't want to hear the bad talking. If you are listening, if you're listening audio only and you want to watch us live, check us out on YouTube and Twitch. Just look for the Iron Sysadmin podcast. Go to ironsysadmin.com for all the details to find whatever the heck you want for social medias in our Discord community and all that stuff. And we're going to go to a break. And we will see you guys in, I don't know, let's call it 5 minutes. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, whatever.
5 minutes seems reasonable.
5 minutes does seem reasonable.
All right, we'll be back, folks. Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/IronSysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/IronSysadmin. And thank you. All right, folks, we're back. I hope you guys stuck with us through the break. I know Jay Scar had to leave as usual. Off to go eat dinner with his family or something.
Or some such nonsense, yeah.
All right, so that was a fun topic. If anyone didn't listen to the first part of the show, you should go back and listen to it. We talked about an article from, I'm going to get his name wrong again.
Some Danish dude.
David Heinemeier Hansen, the dude who made Ruby and co-founder of Basecamp. And hey, I said it right. Did I say it right?
Hey, you tried.
And apparently an
You
author
tried.
and all kinds of good stuff. But he wrote a nice article about.
In other words, he's got some nerd cred.
Yep.
In my book.
Totally. So go back and listen to the first part of the show if you haven't already. You're gonna like it.
And David, if you actually like listened to this after I nagged Nate to send you the podcast, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
I thought your article was great.
It was good, and we're always open to guests on the show, though I don't know what time zone you're in.
On the show, you should come and talk to us.
Might make it difficult. All right, so this is
if he's in EMEA, we could record during the day, our day.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Use work hours to record a stream.
Why? Neither of us actually have to work now. Oh! I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding.
What are you saying, Mark?
I'm totally kidding.
All right. So this is the part of the show where we talk about our announcements. First things first.
Talk about Bruno.
There's no Bruno.
Talk about Bruno.
No, we can't.
No.
Can't talk about Bruno. Bruno is not a topic that we have to discuss.
But it was our wedding day.
All right, so
there wasn't the cloud
Patreon update. We're just gonna try to ignore Mark singing. He just came back from Disney. He's gonna be full of this tonight.
Good idea.
All right, so Patreon update. So first of all, a quick update on the funds that we intend to donate to the American Cancer Society at the end of the year. First of all, I've thought up kind of the details here. Because of the way that Patreon gives me the patron funds per month, they'll happen at the end of December. So we'll probably make the donation like very early January of next year. So just like full disclosure there. Currently, we're up to about $224.48. I say about, but that's the exact amount. That's exactly what's in the account right now.
A boot. As our Canadian friends would say.
So, as I've mentioned, since July, right? All of our funds from July until the end of this year, I intend to donate to the American Cancer Society in memory of my mother-in-law who passed away in July. July. My God, I feel terrible.
It was, dude. It's been.
It was a rough time. It was a rough time.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I want to give a quick shout out to our patrons. Name pending 197, Jeremy, Aranami, Andrew, Tatro, Bruce, Robert, David, Solemn, Linux Sys 666, Mark with a K, The Mentor, Mark with a C, Julius, Andy, Jay, and Charles.
Hi, Charles.
The list feels...
Miss you too.
The list feels incomplete, doesn't it?
Without two.
Without two at the end. It feels incomplete.
Without two.
It's a shame. We miss you too. We miss you. Anyway.
Sniff.
So if you want to support the show via Patreon, do so at patreon.com/IronSysadmin. If you'd rather like buy a shirt or something, you can do that on Teespring. There's a link in the show notes, teespring.com/stores/IronSysadmin. We got a couple other things on there too, like probably some outdated phone cases for phones that don't exist anymore. Coffee mugs and t-shirts and stickers. Yeah. Oh, I guess the other announcement is if you're in the Northeast PA region in the middle of November, November 19th, I guess that's more like the back end of November, we're going to have the annual DEF CON 610 Pub Crawl CTF in East End, Pennsylvania. If you'd like more information about that, you want to go to defcon610.org. And I think I have info on there about it. I might have to update that website.
I'm pretty sure I can make it. I'm pretty sure that's a weekend that I don't have a wedding thing or a scout thing or some other thing.
Cool. Well, I hope so. Unfortunately, one of our admins can't make it that weekend. I don't know why he even put it on the list as an available date.
Who can't make it?
Heath, like the guy who's normally holding it all together for us, can't make it.
Oh, good lord.
It's gonna be interesting. My God, can you hear my kids screaming? They're in the shower on the other side of this wall, and it's just like. Rah!
There's some death involved over there.
There may be.
Oh, good lord.
This is the problem with not having a professional studio and instead using my home office that's just like surrounded by family. All right. So yeah, I think that's our announcements. Do you have any cool announcements, Mark?
Not specifically. No.
I really didn't think you would. All right. We don't have any new reviews. So, folks, if you want to review the show, you should go do so on whatever podcast platform you listen to us on that accepts reviews. Wherever you listen doesn't support reviews, then go to Apple Podcasts and do it there.
Yeah. Just keep our NPS up, right?
Is that on your mind
no
lately?
Bad reviews.
Is that on your mind there, Mark?
No, I'm still butthurt from the guy who didn't like me.
Oh, okay.
I know it was years ago.
It has been.
No,
it's like
it's
like 2 or 3 years now, isn't it?
The NPS for the TAM is amazing. It's like through the roof.
Yep.
So professionally, I'm fine. I'm just still butthurt from the Iron Sysadmin reviewer. The guy didn't like me.
Right. That one bad review we've had. The only one. Maybe no one else.
Such a snowflake.
Maybe no one else reviews because they don't want to hurt your feelings, Mark.
And I appreciate that.
If you don't have anything nice to say.
I do. That's it. Right? Isn't that what your mother used to say? Or that's what they say your mother used to say?
Yeah. You're from New Jersey, though. Your mother probably didn't say that. Your mother probably said, "Stab the bitches!" I have no idea.
My mother... No.
All right.
My mother was mild. Mild-mannered.
So in the chat tonight, I was gonna talk about the Elon Musk and Twitter thing, but I was hoping Jason would be here because I figured he'd have some opinions. And I know you don't use Twitter, so.
Well, no, I lightly use Twitter. Okay. Lightly. So what's going? Just to give our audience, and this is not me trying to humble brag, but just to give our audience some perspective, I was on vacation for almost 2 weeks. Like I'm like really like apparently that crazy ass trial with the parade guy happened. I've been catching up on those videos because he's insane. Because one of my hobbies is watching videos of sovereign citizens being idiots.
Parade guy. But was that the one that like drove his car through the parade?
Yeah,
that one. Yeah.
But one of the like I haven't been staying on top of the tech news. Mark, has there been recent developments with Musk and Twitter?
Mark,
in the past 2 weeks?
You're not looking at the Twitch chat, are you? Because you should. You should look at the Twitch chat right now.
I'm not. I got the consolidated chat.
Can you read that? You should read that.
Review. Love Uncle Mark singing. Yes.
Yay, Uncle Mark.
Yes.
Anyway,
that almost makes up for the review from several years ago from some internet stranger I'll never meet in my life.
I was distracted by that and didn't hear what you were saying. I'm sorry, Mark. Can you?
That's okay. I was saying I've been a little out of touch, and I've been trying to catch back up, like on work stuff, and then on this crazy trial.
Yeah.
But for the tech news stuff, like Elon Musk being Elon Musk, is something new? Is there a new development?
Well, so I mean, I'm pretty sure you're already up to date on the Elon Musk said, "Hey, I'm going to buy Twitter." Oh no, Twitter! Can you prove to me how many users are actually bots? Oh, that's too few. You lied to me. I'm not going to buy Twitter. And apparently,
I remember that kind of went down.
That like had an effect on Twitter's stocks and all kinds of stuff.
Of course, it did.
And apparently, like, I don't fully understand how this works, but apparently Twitter was able to then go to Elon Musk legally and say, no, you're buying us now. Which to me is like, what? How can you do that? But I guess because of who he is and because of the power he wields and because of the impact that they've had, Like they like what did it like negatively impacted Twitter's value? So now the amount that he said he was going to buy Twitter for is like a lot more than Twitter is valued at. So Twitter's like, you have to buy us now, and that went to court, and apparently Elon Musk has to buy Twitter now.
Nah,
So
it's kind of dumb.
it's weird. Like the whole, I'll fully admit, I don't fully understand why it is that Elon Musk now has to buy Twitter. But as a response to that, I've seen long time Twitter users saying like, we're gonna nope out of Twitter as soon as he buys it. And
Yeah, that was the threat when
that
it
was
first
that
came
was
up to
kind of
paper.
what I was like curious about. I was gonna see what Jason had to say about that, if he had any insight as to like why that is. I guess like, so Twitter has a history of like cesspool style comments, right? And of course, Twitter has done some
Oh,
work to try to filter and get rid of those, right?
just a little bit.
And you could argue they haven't done enough because they're social media, and that's the popular thing to say. Oh, social media doesn't do enough. But realistically, it's a really hard problem to solve. And I hope you agree with
Hmm.
me on that one, because I feel like it's a really hard problem to solve. I've been an email
It
admin
is.
trying to filter out spam and crap. It's not easy. It's not
No, and
easy.
social media just takes that to the nth power.
Right, right. So, what? Elon Musk entered Twitter HQ with a sink, I think. A what? Like a kitchen sink? Anyway, um, where was I? Oh, and then Elon Musk has said that basically he wants a freedom of speech platform, right? Which does not filter people's comments because, there's this. I don't even know how to approach this. There's this conspiracy, quote unquote, where conservatives feel that they're being filtered or they're being quieted, right? Um, I I don't know where I fall on that, but I can tell you that some of the stuff that people cite is like, no, 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 that's not being filtered. That was hate speech, or that
Yeah.
was something that shouldn't have been said, right? Freedom of speech is one thing. You're still an asshole. But anyway, so I don't know if that's why people are like, no, we're gonna leave if Elon Musk takes over. Now we don't even know that he's gonna do the things that he says he wants to do. Maybe he'll actually do things like talk to the people who currently run Twitter after he buys them, and they'll be like, no, 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 what you want to do is a very bad idea, and maybe he'll listen. Maybe he won't. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going on and on about a thing that I don't think we have about a bunch to talk about because, again, I was hoping Jason would be here to chat about it, but he couldn't make it tonight. So I'll go back to drinking.
Yeah,
All right.
good plan.
So, yeah, maybe we'll talk about that some other time. And maybe by the next time Jason's on, it'll have been done and he'll have left Twitter and he'll be happily like some other social media platform that doesn't get owned by Elon Musk. All right. Well, the other thing I had to chat about was I've had this long running thread of slowly but surely getting rid of Google devices in my household.
Don't call me Shirley.
Okay, I'll try not to. Started with I switched from my Android phone back to iPhone. Then Google took away my Stadia, and I cried. No, I didn't cry. But I've been working on slowly getting rid of my Google Home devices and replacing them with Amazon devices, and that isn't necessarily because I don't like them. Well, it is because I don't like them. It's not because I don't like the company that's backing them or because the service is going away, but it's more like they've been getting progressively less useful instead of more useful. And I went as far as to like ask around online about other folks that I know use them, and a lot of people are agreeing with that. They're like, "Yep, yeah, it's definitely getting worse. The voice recognition isn't as good as it used to be. Some of the features went away as a result of a lawsuit from a little while back when they had that Sonos lawsuit. So I decided, all right, I'm just going to give another platform a try. So we've got some Amazon Echo devices now. I've got 4 of them in the household now, but I don't have enough of them that I can turn off all of the Google devices yet. But the other thing is, a while back I bought a Google Wi-Fi mesh setup because I was trying to simplify my IT situation at home. My God, the kids are loud. Like every now and then I hear them through my headphones. That's how loud they are. Anyway,
Good Lord.
yeah. So I finally bit the bullet and bought a Ubiquiti Unify Wi-Fi setup. I picked up the Dream Machine, which is the controller, and I picked up a couple of used APs, and I'm going to start working on putting them in, and then the Google Wi-Fi will go away. To be honest, it's been a really great device. Like, I don't have any real complaints about it, except that it is oversimplified, and that was kind of the point when I bought it, right? Like, I was trying to simplify my home IT infrastructure so that I could do things like tell my wife how to reset the router over the phone, because I was still working remotely or working in an office at the time. And the Google Wi-Fi was nice. It had this cool little app I ran on my phone. I could like do all the simple things that I needed to be able to do. It still supported most of the stuff you expect out of a router, like port forwarding and DHCP reservations. But I've just outgrown it. Now that I'm home all the time, and I'm getting into the home automation stuff with Home Assistant, I find the UI for the thing infuriating. And there's certain places where it's limited, where I feel like it doesn't need to be. So I'm finally ditching it. I'm going with a Unify, like a lot of other nerds have done. I don't know what you run, Mark. I get the feeling you run like something that came from your cable provider and don't even think about it, right?
What's that?
For your home Wi-Fi.
I have an Asus router. An Asus router.
Oh, okay.
And I've got one extension drop point up in the kitchen.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I guess that's kind of what I've got going on. I came into a little bit of money recently, not like life-changing money, but enough that I could buy some of the stuff I've been putting off, and that's where the Alexas came from, and that's where the Echoes, I should say, came from, and the Unify box. Oh, and I bought new headphones because these are like falling apart, like the. Oh, and I guess the other thing, I didn't mention this on the show, but I switched from an iPhone 11 to an iPhone 13 mini, right? So here's my new 13 mini. And the thing I was worried about, so I got it essentially no cost because Verizon does trade-ins, and the iPhone 11 trade-in value was $600, and the price of this was $600, so like it evened out. That's pretty cool. But anyway, I was worried about the battery life, and because it's a smaller phone, it has a smaller battery in it, and a lot of people say, oh, the battery's abysmal. It's like it doesn't last very long, and yada, yada, yada. And that was the only thing I was worried about. So if anybody out there is thinking about an iPhone mini because they want a smaller form factor phone, I'm going to tell you the battery life is not bad. I could probably get a day and a half to 2 days out of one charge, because the iPhone does such a great job of managing its battery. Like when it's sitting on my nightstand, it seems to consume almost nothing. If I forget to plug it in at night or something, I can go the whole day the next day before I realize I didn't plug it in. That's how good the damn thing is. So yeah, don't be afraid of the battery life on the Mini.
I mean, I had cell phones in the day when you got 6 to 8 hours out of the battery.
Mm-hmm.
You like had to recharge them at work.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if I get 24 hours, or hell, if I get 16 hours out of a phone through normal use, that's plenty, because I'm generally plugging it in when I go to bed the next night.
Yeah, the only time it's been an issue for me, is like when I do like a camping trip, and maybe I don't have the ability to charge it for a couple of days.
Yeah, yeah. So you're still doing Boy Scout style camping trips where you don't necessarily always have ready access to power.
Exactly. Like we did a canoe trip over the summer, which was 6 days, 5 nights, and the first 3 or 4 days you were nowhere near power.
Right.
If you didn't have like little battery packs with you, you weren't charging.
So I still camp, but generally my camping trips also involve off-road trips. And
my Jeep, a little bit different.
My Jeep can charge my phone, so
absolutely.
I
Oh
don't have
yeah,
a problem
no,
with that, right?
yeah, and I wouldn't change my phone just because of my every so often camping.
Yeah,
Quite frankly, there are good power packs you can get that my son and other people keep stealing from me that'll charge a phone several times that you
yeah,
can take on a trip with you.
yeah. Either just a big bulky battery, or you can get a nice solar charger that you could set up. I mean, again, that means you have to be sitting in a place that has sunlight for long enough to charge the phone. But yes, they're a thing you can do. So maybe you could mount one to your canoe, solar panel to the canoe to charge a
I
power
I
brick.
actually did have a solar panel thingy that I brought this time. It just charged so slowly.
They do. Well, solar
But
power on a panel this big, it just isn't a lot of
it's
power.
just it's not a lot.
It's
No,
just
it's
not a
not.
lot,
It's
right?
not.
But if you like set it up to
Getting a
charge a power brick all day while you're canoeing, that might be significant.
maybe.
There go the kids. They're out of the shower now, which means they're probably currently running down the hallway naked. Because that's how my kids are.
Probably.
They just can't
That's
figure
how they
out
roll.
like modesty, privacy. What? What are those things?
I'm
They're gonna
surprised
be
they're not pounding on the door now.
they're gonna be streakers someday, and then I'm gonna be really upset.
All right.
Anyway, so that's what I got going on. Mark, what do you got going on aside from having just been back from Disney?
Yeah. So, like I said, not a lot of tech news happening. Although I'm about to hire a new nerd for my team, replacing
Awesome.
someone who left. Yeah. So that's been an interesting process from the other side. I really can't talk much more about it because privacy. But
Weird.
yeah,
You can't
it's
talk about
definitely
work or people's private information. What?
yeah.
Why do I even
Yeah.
have you here, Mark?
There were several good candidates. It's always hard making a call with something like this, right?
Yeah.
I would have hired all of them if I could have, but I could
And
not. I had to pick one.
and Tam is such I don't know how to describe it. It's such a unique role, right? Like having
Yeah.
been through the hiring, working it for a couple years, and then leaving for a different position in such a short I don't want to say short time span. For some people, 3 years in the same role is like you did what, right? But it's such a unique role, right? Coming into it, you think
Been a
it's going to
lot.
be a support role, and it kind of is, but it's not.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then
It's
it's
it's it's a
yeah,
weird ass hybrid of a job.
it's a really weird role, and I can only imagine the sort of things you have to go through to try to make sure you're hiring the right person, right?
In the end, it's an educated guess.
Yeah,
And candidates who seem questionable can be great TAMs, and candidates who interview great and look like they have a good background can end up being terrible.
yeah.
You sometimes don't know until they're actually in the role.
Like so much of it can be personality, right? Like
It can be.
you can know all the stuff, right? And that might make you, my God, what are they doing out there? And that can make you great on the technical side, but that's not all of the role, right? You also need to be able to
I
talk to
would
people and de-escalate things and talk people through like those angry, pissed off, like I opened a support case and nobody got back to me and yeah, rah, 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 rah. And you can be like, well,
my
that's because they were within SLA. Oh, but why did they only ask me for an SOS report? Oh, well, because they needed it. You didn't give it
so
to
what
them.
what I can say is that the person I settled on was not necessarily the strongest technical, but their businessy and social skills
Right,
are fantastic.
right.
And we can teach people the technical. You can't always teach them the people skills.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Like the ability to talk some CEO that's on the other end of the line with you down from canceling all of their Red Hat contracts
Yeah.
is it's not just the account exec's fault or problem at that point, right?
It doesn't happen
Tam's
all the
involved in
time,
that
but
stuff.
good lord, it can.
It can. It can.
But so hopefully I'll have some good stories soon. But I do have a nerd thing that I found. My printer is not running now because I want it to be respectful because it's kind of loud. I think what's going to happen is we're going to Lumberville tomorrow, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think on Saturday morning I'm going to kick off this Haunted Mansion print because it says it's like a 15-hour print,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm kind of excited about it.
That's pretty cool.
I also realized the PLA that I have on the side. I never noticed this before, but I don't know if it's on this spool, but it's definitely on the spool that's loaded that I'm using for the one I mentioned. Oh, it's not on this. It actually has like a little fuel gauge almost saying,
Yeah.
you know, this is like this guy has a little over. This guy has like almost 100 meters left.
Yeah.
I wouldn't guess that's 100 meters left.
Yeah. The Overture stuff is nice. I like Overture.
So I'm pretty excited about it.
I forget if
Hopefully it'll print okay.
Overture or Hatchbox switched to cardboard rolls, which when I first opened one up and I'm like, oh, it's on cardboard now, I was a little disappointed. But then when I started thinking about it, I'm like, all these rolls just go into the garbage. I mean, sure, you could recycle them, I guess. They're recyclable plastic, aren't they?
I guess. I don't throw them away very often.
Right, right. But, like, on bigger projects, you go through a lot of them. And I'm actually kind of impressed that they switched to cardboard rolls. I think that's a good idea.
I don't care as long as it works.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's the most important thing. Will it work?
Oh yeah, well the cardboard roll absolutely works just as well as the plastic one does. I was kind
Well, then that's fine.
I was just kind of
Ship it in
impressed.
cardboard.
Yeah, I was kind of impressed that they had made that effort.
Yeah. But yeah. Like I had to print a new stand for some Disney pins. I bought some more pins and I needed a short stand for that, so that's up on the top of my shelf now. Printed that after getting home the other day. The 3D printers become I don't use it all the time, but when I want to use it, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of where it's settled in at this point.
There was a while where mine was like running 24/7. And now it's tapered off.
I've been out of that for a while, but
yeah,
it's cool though. Like I print things that I was seriously considering buying a Haunted Mansion Lego set because I have some Red Hat rewards, and then I'm like, wait a minute, let me see if someone's actually made a model of it, like on Thingiverse, and lo and behold, someone did. So I'm like, I'm going to try to print my own Haunted Mansion, and maybe I'll even paint it if I'm feeling compelled to be artsy. Then there was my Steam Deck stand. I think I've showed you this before.
but
cool. This lets me sit the Steam Deck at a slant on my desk rather than just flat on its back. So that's kind of fun. Just little utilitarian things like that. Plus, my fidget cubes are fun.
I printed something similar for my tablet.
Infinite fidget cubes.
I have a little tablet stand I printed out that I can sit
like,
my tablet on my desk.
To me, that really fulfills the promise of on-demand, small batch manufacturing at home.
Like, yeah, right.
You're solving an immediate problem. Like you don't have to try and find something online and order it. You don't have to go to the dollar store and see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone else has had this problem. They made a model, or you make your own model, right? Now, that's not nearly as easy, but. When I did there's new LEDs in my office. I have them like around the perimeter of the top of the office. Yeah. And when I first set them up, the LED strips have like adhesive on the back, and I just stuck them to the crown molding around the top of the room, and that didn't stick as well as I hoped it would, as you might expect. Like I was 50-50 on whether that was actually going to stay or not, and it didn't. But I found
narrator, it did not.
Yeah, a lot of LED strips come with, like, if you buy a professionally made LED strip with a controller already, it'll come with these little bracket things that you can mount and then clip the LED strip into, right? And I had no idea where to buy something like that, but I found them on Thingiverse and I was able to print some. So I printed them and then I tacked it up with little nails, right? And I ended up buying like actual, I don't know if you can see it. There's like actual molding that's made to hold the strips. I ended up getting that and putting it up there. So I ended up not using the little clips that I made. But it was just cool to be able to print them out and have them, Yeah. But I also made like little cable clamps for the wires that have to go up to power them. So that I did use. And have a bunch of those left over. So they're pretty cool. Having a 3D printer is like very freeing.
In some ways it is. Right?
Yeah. I mean,
I think what happens is people
like the little case for the controller I printed out on the 3D printer. The case for the controller for the lights, that's pretty cool.
I think what'll happen is a lot of people will get them and they'll print like a handful of things and they'll be like, well, what do I do with it?
Yeah,
And
right.
it's that can be a legitimate problem. Um, but I like that it's there for when I have this sudden desire or need for something that I want to print, and then bam, it's there we go.
Yeah, yeah. So, in the chat, someone's asking, is it you, Nate, that your printer would misalign during printing? Did you ever figure it out? And unfortunately, no. So I don't know if you'll be able to see it on camera. This print, the reason it's sitting here is, I don't know if you can see, but like halfway up, the layers shift over by like
Ogres have layers.
a tiny little bit of a millimeter.
Enough that it screws it up.
Enough that it screws up the print. I don't know if it's software related, because I went through and I like checked all.
You know what is sometimes fixed? What sometimes fixes bullshit like that is if in the slicer, if you just rotate it 45 degrees on the build plate, it sometimes fixes stuff like that.
So I have this. Every time I print this, it shifts at the same spots, exact same spots.
Right.
So I thought maybe the build plate, because your build plate moves around. Mine is not stationary, but it only has a Z axis. That is the Z axis for mine. The build plate moves down, and the X and Y are controlled on like this gantry, right? So I thought maybe the build plate, as it's coming down, shifts slightly, right? And that's why it happens at the same layer every time. So I tried a different print, and it also had a layer shift problem, but at different spots. It wasn't the exact same spot. So I'm like, all right, I don't know what's going on. I cleaned everything real good. I checked all the tolerances on like the belt for the X and Y. I re-leveled the bed. I did all the normal maintenance stuff. And then the other print came out fine. Like, oh, cool, I must have fixed it. But then I printed this one again, and it came out with the same layer shift problem at the exact same spots. I'm thinking it's this build. Like, it's this. I'm going to go take this back into my slicer and check all the parameters that I put into it. Maybe move it around, whatever.
Spin it 45 degrees on the build plate.
See what happens? Yeah.
I've had that fix weird ass stuff because you're dealing with physics.
Yeah. So I'm gonna, I don't know. I have to fiddle around with this one and see if I can make it stop happening, or if I rotate it and then it happens in a different axis.
What's Uncle Mark always tell people 3D printing is like?
It's like Linux in the 90s.
That's damn straight. It's like Linux in the 90s. It's awesome, but it requires some finagling.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely...
it works, it feels great.
Definitely like, it's almost like an art form at this point. 3D printing.
Maybe we're in the early 2000s at this point with Octoprint and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, it's definitely coming along. But
I love I use Octoprint 100% of the time now. I don't use the SD card swap anymore or anything like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Octoprint is really nice. It's like game changing, even if it is just behind you like yours is.
Yeah.
All right. Did you have anything else you want to talk about, or are we going to the news?
No, we need to, because I'm tired, man, and we got an early morning. I'm still recovering from vacation, and I'm not.
We do. But we're gonna see other Red Hatters tomorrow, man. It's worth it.
We are.
I'd wake up at 5 to do that, but I'm not.
I have woken up at 5.
I'm waking up at 6 to do that. And 6, my God, working from home has so. I used to wake up at 5:40 every morning so I could make it to work on time, and I would make it to work by 9.
My alarm will go off at 7, and I'll be like, I don't want to get out of bed yet.
Exactly. I could sleep till 8 and still get to work with plenty of time because work is just right outside my door.
Yeah, because now tomorrow will be a little different because I don't need to make breakfast. I'll probably make some coffee and have a piece of toast just to hold me over.
Yeah.
But I do have to walk the dogs. I'm going to have to actually shower and get dressed.
Yeah. It's funny how you can delay that on certain days. Like, I don't really have to get a shower before work. I can get it at 11 in the morning if I really want to.
I think, I forget. I think I didn't shower yesterday. Ew. So I insisted on a shower before work today.
Yeah.
I just couldn't.
Yeah.
I just couldn't.
Yeah, for me it's like a mindset thing. Getting a shower, like, I don't know, puts me in the right mode for for working. If I get out of bed and come straight to the desk and start working, I'm not nearly as productive as if I go and get a shower, have breakfast, and then come back to the desk. I don't know. It's just
Oh, I have breakfast. I just might not shower until
Right.
lunch.
right. All right. So I guess we're going to move along into the news. What do you think?
Let's do it.
All right. Here we go. I did the thing where I forgot to open the news articles in tabs before we got here. But here we are. All right, I got them open now.
There you go.
All right, so I quickly scoured for the news tonight. I'm sorry, folks. So we don't have anything terribly earth-shattering. Oh, my wife is yelling at the kids from all the rambunctiousness, I'm sure. All right, so the first one is from Ars Technica. In fact, 3 of our 4 articles are from Ars Technica tonight. So, just if I forget to mention it, it's probably from Ars Technica. Ars Technica. Surface Duo continues its worst in class update record. Ships Android 12. So the Surface Duo.
Is that bad?
Well, I forget what release we're up to. Let's find out.
I don't use Android, so.
What is the
What, chicken butt?
latest release of Android? I think it's like 15. Maybe it's 14.
Oh.
God, I was hoping it would give me like a quick. The number is 12. Seriously, I'm getting all kinds of old articles from like, oh, Android 8 is released. No, anyway, it's something like 13, 14, maybe even 15 at this point. Honestly, like, is there just like an android.org or something?
Hmm.
Seriously, what's the latest release, people? I can't believe I don't know this, to be honest, because I ran Android for so long. Anyway,
You're
it's
so
not
terrible.
It's not 12. Right. So the Surface Duo is apparently a dual-screened Surface tablet from Microsoft. Although I'm surprised it doesn't run Windows, to be honest. It sounds like it retailed at like $1,500, which is a ridiculously high price. But when you consider, like, this may have been one of the earlier dual-screen handhelds, right? Apparently, it just got Android 12, which seems a little, out of date. I guess this is an ongoing problem for the Surface Duo, which is why this is news.
So the Surface Duo doesn't run Windows?
I'm confused by that as well, but it looks like, no, it is in fact running Android. Well, didn't Microsoft abandon their Phone OS? Because this looks like a phone.
And their Phone OS was actually pretty cool.
I heard that. I heard that it was pretty good.
I think someone wants to build a snowman. There was more knocking at your
You're
door.
probably right.
Yeah, I thought the Surfaces were Windows machines. I'm confused now.
This one does not seem to be.
All right.
Yeah, after the death of Windows Phone, it says. Leave a lot to be desired until the first version. Yada, yada, yada.
I guess the Duo. I guess it's more like a smaller.
More than a 7-month upgrade. Update. Oh, I see what it is. 12 came out. Maybe 12 is the latest, but it only just hit this device. And it came out in March. More than a 7-month update time. And this is the problem. This is the problem with Android devices. And it's one of the reasons that when I had Android, I was running strictly Google devices. Because nothing else gets updates as quickly. Right? So you have an Android device from Samsung. It's probably not as bad. But from a lot of the other third parties, it could be that you never get an Android update. You may get security fixes, but you'll never get the next version of Android. But on a Pixel device, you get it pretty quickly because Google has an interest in making sure they're up to date. Not like with Apple. Apple will, as soon as it's released, they'll send it out to, whatever batches to test it, and then they'll send it out to the public in mass because they have full control of the hardware stack. But with Android, it
Mhm.
just isn't the case, right? There's so much diversity that Google can't cook it in, and it's up to the
No.
hardware manufacturers, like Microsoft in this case, and it takes them time to make sure that it works and tests well on their devices before they release it. And in this case, it took 7 months, which is like kind of ridiculous. Like, imagine that there was some horrible security fix that you were waiting on. It took 7 months to come out. You know what I mean?
I think if you're running Microsoft products, you're kind of used to being in that position anyway.
Well,
Oh,
I mean, to be honest, Windows gets updates like that fast enough, especially when they're high criticality. But anyway,
let me have my thing.
okay, I'll let you complain about Microsoft. Even though
Actually, I don't.
you and I both know
Microsoft.
that I think both of us are on Windows at the moment.
The only reason I keep Windows around, and the Steam Deck is making it easier and easier to just never game on the system. The only reason I keep Windows around, because stuff actually runs better on my Steam Deck than on my decent gaming rig,
Yeah,
is for the VR stuff.
yeah, yeah,
That's it.
yeah.
That's the only gaming I do on the system anymore is VR stuff.
That may change with the next index. That's what I'm hoping. Although I don't know if you're going to
We'll
want to
see.
invest in an index right away since you recently bought the one you have. I guess it isn't that recent. It's a couple years now, isn't it?
As long as Flight Simulator 2020 continues to perform as well as it does, I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep my hardware locked where it is.
Yeah.
My video card's good enough. The index is still great. I have no compelling reason to update this gaming rig. Any gaming dollars will be spent probably on my next major gaming purchase will probably be PSVR 2 when that releases.
Yeah. Yeah. I've well, I don't want to derail the news, but I've still been thinking about upgrading my VR headset. The HTC Vive is still great, but I really want a little more clarity to the games.
That's why I needed. That's why I needed
Yeah.
the index.
Yeah, my kids love it. So my thought is like I'll get myself an upgraded headset and then I'll set this up somewhere that they can use it whenever they really want to. But yeah, that's like
sounds
a
reasonable.
later problem.
Later.
Okay. All right. So the next article is surprise. Meta shares plunged 24% to the lowest price since 2016. Meta, of course.
Zuckerberg.
Meta, of course, being Facebook's parent. Now, I skimmed this article a bit, right? Because it's fun to just be like, oh, look at Meta flounder, right? Here's the thing. Zuckerberg and Meta are pouring a ton of money into VR, right? And that's why this is happening. Like, that's why their company valuation is dropping, because they're just like pouring money into a new technology. Now, if that pans out, like, they may succeed and get that money back in like whatever the next thing is, right? And I think that's what they're betting on, right? We've heard about this time and time again from so many different companies. So part of me worries that they're going to succeed. Right? Because I, just like you, I don't really want them to be like the name in Metaverse that they're trying to be. But anyway, I have trouble like faulting them because their value went down. Yes, it looks bad, and yes, the market's going to be like, oh, look at Facebook floundering. They're doing terrible. They're doing terrible in a way that they've decided to do. Not in a way that was on accident, or because people are shunning them, or because, they've failed. It's because they're spending money on a thing they're investing in. So I feel like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just rambling here. Do you get what I'm saying?
I don't know.
Like, they're doing it on purpose with a goal.
I don't see that the metaverse that what they're demoing, it's like hot garbage. Like,
no, right?
I'm just super cynical.
I'm not trying.
Does John Q. Public look at what Meta's offering and say, "Wow, that's really cool"?
I'm not trying to say that I support their version of the metaverse or that they should win or that anything I've seen coming out of all this money they're pouring into it has impressed me in any way. I'm just saying that the reason the reason behind it is intention, not accident. Right? Like,
No,
you know what I
right.
mean?
They're spending a large amount of money to try and win,
Right.
and maybe
Right.
they will because John Q. Public can be stupid.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. We'll have to
So,
see.
at any rate, that came from CNBC, by the way, not Ars Technica. Our next two articles are going to be from Ars Technica, though.
Ars Technica, where pirates reviews. Ars.
All right, so we're going to move on to the next article. But yeah,
Dead
Meta.
men tell no tales. Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay. Is that like a
Pirates of the
pirate
Caribbean.
reference? Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Dead men tell no tales.
So, speaking of large companies that are losing money, Google is one of them.
Womp womp.
Yeah, so this is also from Ars Technica. Nobody would miss cloud platform. That's the comment above this. I don't understand. Anyway, Google profits plummet 27% in Q3 2022 earnings report. I guess the earnings reports are like a thing that are coming out right now. That's why these are all popular all of a sudden. Again, I skimmed through this one. I didn't necessarily want a whole bunch of like financial doom and gloom articles, but the thing that intrigued me about this one is because it seems to be ad revenue related. And I'm curious, like what they're saying is that companies are spending less on ads because of the economy. And of course, Google is primarily an ads company, regardless of what you might think. They're not a hardware company. They're not a cell phone company. They're an ad company. Their goal is to harvest as much data about you and sell you things. But they say companies are not spending as much on ads, and that's why they have fallen. But I'm actually curious if it's because of the prevalence now of more and more privacy concerns with ad tracking and people running ad blockers and people like my iPhone now will let me ask an app not to track me, right? Like, is that impacting companies like Google? I gotta think it has to be, right?
Yeah, maybe.
So, not that I feel bad about that.
Not at all.
But I'm just sort of curious, right? Are our actions or is Apple's actions starting to impact companies like Google because they can't get the ad revenue out of it? I heard on the news, I forget what it was. It was like an NPR session or something that I heard on where they interviewed a small business owner because she ran like a flower shop or something. I forget what it was. And she leveraged Facebook ads to get traffic to her business, right? Which is, a very common thing. Facebook is covered with ads. That's their job too. That's their goal too, right? They harvest data, they target ads, and you buy stuff. Businesses on the other end of that, of course, profit from you buying stuff. Well, because of Apple's efforts to block tracking on the Apple platform, and of course, Apple is one of the most popular platforms for mobile devices, this woman actually saw a pretty sharp decrease in sales because the ads can't be targeted as well. So the money she's putting into ads aren't translating to sales as much. So I'm wondering if that's also hitting, the people who are providing the ads, the people that you buy the ads from, as well as the small businesses, right? And in her defense, she wasn't like crying about it. She's like, I value privacy too. It just means we need to figure out a better way to advertise to people,
Good.
But yeah. Anyway, I just thought it was interesting.
That is.
And then our last article, also from Ars Technica. Google can now remove your identifying search results if they're the right kind. And this is apparently some technology where Google has developed sort of a search engine for private information. So, and I don't mean stuff like ad tracking information, even though we were just talking about ad tracking information. I mean things like, where does Nate live? What's Nate's social security number? What's Nate's mother's maiden name? Right? That sort of stuff. you can now Google has developed this tool to help people locate that information on the internet, so that if you're in a position where you do not want that information out there in the public, you can try to find it and get it removed, which I thought was actually kind of a good thing. Now, it's Google. They'll probably decommission it in 6 months because it's a good tool and it's Google. But I just thought it was an interesting step in the right direction. And they say that this is to help folks who are worried about being quote-unquote doxxed. You know how people...
I will assume positive intent for this one.
Yeah. But again, it'll be gone in 6 months. Maybe a year or two.
It might live as long as Stadia. It might not. Who can
It
tell?
might. Is this the new benchmark? Does it live as long as Stadia?
Does it live as long as Stadia? Are you dumber than a 5th grader?
Stadia got a couple years, believe it or not.
Can your product outlast Stadia?
Yeah. What was it? It might have been.
I did read that some of the games that people played on Stadia that were like subscription service type things, like Elder Scrolls Online and stuff, they're able to migrate off of Stadia.
Good.
So that people weren't screwed.
Yeah. Yeah, the Stadia situation is unfortunate, but I gotta be honest, anyone who was depending on it, like, you should have known. You should have known it was coming.
I mean, Google's got a track record for...
You should have known.
Their reputation is well earned, shall we say.
If you want a streaming game service, you should have got it from someone like Microsoft or PlayStation.
Right.
Someone who's in the gaming scene and has a track record of actually keeping things around.
Yeah. Even friggin' Nintendo, right? But
yeah.
Google? No. Not Google.
Again, I feel like I have to defend myself every time Stadia comes up. I was curious about it, which is why I bought it, and it worked well enough.
And it's a good controller, I hear.
And the controller, it's a good controller. Listen to the buttons. That's a good button.
Okay, Nate.
It's a good button. Anyway, and they're comfortable. Anyway,
they're there.
I'm gonna try not to talk about my Stadia controllers. All right, but so I think that's everything for tonight.
Sounds like a plan.
Did you have any more news? Any more news you wanted to talk about, or you're tired? You want to get to bed? I'm
tired.
I'm tired too.
Yeah.
It's only 9:00. Holy crap!
Some dude showing up at my house early tomorrow to...
I know.
Go to Lumberville.
He offered to drive you to Lumberville. I'm just going to remind you of that.
All right.
All right. So, yeah. All right. So, we're going to call it a night, folks. If anyone listened live, we want to thank you for sticking with us this long. Looks like there's some folks in the live stream yet. If you did not watch us live and you would like to, go look us up on both Twitch and YouTube, or one or the other. You don't have to do both. Just look for the Iron Sysadmin podcast. There's links to find either of those on ironsysadmin.com. You can support the show on Patreon, patreon.com/ironsysadmin. You can join either our Discord community or our Matrix space. I have links to both of those in the show notes, or again on ironsysadmin.com. If you want to watch us live, aside from finding us on those various outlets, it happens the second and fourth Thursday, the second and fourth Thursday of every month. Just subscribe, hit that little notification bell, and you'll know, because I've been trying to do a better job of scheduling them so that you'll get a notification beforehand. And with that, I think that's everything. Any final thoughts, Mark?
Still have my thumb, so that's something.
You still have your thumb, even though...
My headphone thumb.
You'll just have to go back to listen to the first half of the episode to find out why Mark's worried about his thumb.
And my watch has power! My Apple Watch has power! It didn't have power at the beginning! Now it's got power! So I can put my Apple Watch back on.
All right, folks. I hope everyone has a great week, and we will see you sometime in November. Whenever the second Thursday of November is.
Whatever.
All right.
Whatever it is.
Good night, everybody. Have a good one.
Peace out, Cub Scouts.